All right. Well, hello everyone, and thank you if you're all watching. Thank you for joining me for another live stream where I'm going to be continuing on from last Sunday with this Sesame Street piece here and everything. So that I've been working on, and I haven't done tons of stuff to it just yet because I've been trying to leave a lot of it and everything so you guys would know, but again, for you guys last week, as I was saying with this piece and whatnot, this is from 2011. It was a quick little sketch study or whatever I was doing at the time. Lord knows I can't remember. But as I was doing it last week, I was going over like Elmo here and everything on how I was doing my inks and stuff and how I was putting it together. And let's see if we can get this going here. And as you can see, I have done a lot to the piece itself. But as I was going through it all, I noticed that a lot of the faces, like if you look at Bert and Ernie over here, they didn't exactly look like the character. And there were some things wrong. Even Elmo on a couple of his bodies where it should have came out more. So I had to make some adjustments and stuff. And that's kind of the thing too as you go along. It's another reason why I chose this piece. I wanted to show people that, as you progress, as you go on, and when you're using reference, as I have up here after looking at everything, that there are improvements and stuff that you have to make, and there's things you have to take a critical eye to your own work, not overcritical, because if you get too critical, then you're not going to be too depressed or too anxious about doing it and everything. So one of the things you do want to do is just kind of, actually use reference. And as you can see here, let me go up to my sketch so y'all can see a little bit better. I did make a lot of adjustments. Now I made this red so it would stand out and everything, and basically what I did was just sketch into the computer and whatnot, and just trying to put it all together to get the faces, the body structures and stuff a lot better. Now I did do a lot more around here, and this character I'm still working on. The hands fine, some of this, but the face is not exactly there. And then you can see with Grover up here in the corner, his head wasn't in the right position. This was completely off. I still got some adjustments on the hands, and you got Telly and Zoe's where her hands are all messed up and everything. So let's get rid of this line art so you guys can see exactly what I'm talking about. And let's switch it back to, we'll put a white background so all this will pop out a little bit more. And we'll go back to the inks. So you can see where the characters and everything, and you see where Grover's helmet, when he's Super Grover, is coming together a lot better. It's actually a little bit more exact in the perspective than it was initially. And then let me get rid of this red sketch, and you can see that Bert and Ernie look like Bert and Ernie now instead of whatever I was trying to do before. Yes, like I said, I still got to work on Zoe's hands here, and there's still of the Count's jacket, his suit, whatever you want to call it, a couple of the capes and stuff that still got to go through. Think of this as you're looking over this is a one-time passover, a one-time going through, because since there's so many characters in this collage, one of the things I want to do, as I started to do a little bit here with Elmo, actually after changing his hand and stuff, because the hand I was showcasing last week, it didn't feel right, and as I made him rounder, it just felt more of the character, as you can see over here. So one of the things that you're going to have to do, though, since all these characters are on the front, I'm going to have to go over here and go through all these lines and try to thicken them out a little bit, just to make them stand out a little bit more so they'll pop out as you go along. But as you can see up here in the corner, there's not that much line width when they're putting together the characters and stuff. It's like one line. Now, of course, as you look at Elmo compared to mine, Elmo has this kind of, you just draw it over here to the side, kind of wavy, kind of bulgy little thing that I don't even really call it, as they do his body and whatnot, where I chose to do it more of like a furry type thing. So that's just a personal preference, but if I was contracted to do it exactly the way it should be done, and then I would of course change it. But when you're doing stuff for yourself, you can kind of fudge it a little bit. Alright, so, and let me also show you so you can see the difference. Let me zoom out so you guys can get overwhelmed. I also did some flats, which is basically what they've done here. There's no shadows, there's no tones, there's no highlights really. It's just one solid color. So that's exactly what I'm kind of going to go with this. I don't think I'm going to do highlights and stuff once I'm finished with it, kind of stay in the same vein as this, but there's still a lot more I got to add, just like the tip of Count's little cape here, his little around him. I got to add a little bit more there, and you can see the color from right here, the purple inside, where it's going to be kind of in the background, and all this is kind of left until I get Zoe's hands put together. But this can kind of give you an idea of even this simple one-time pass-through layer of the ink line and trying to make it pop a little bit more, and make those changes to my horrible line work that I did and try to make it actually look like the characters more often, that you can leave it like this and it would be fine. Now, me personally, I'm going to go through and add more depth. I'm going to add some more ink lines. I'm going to add a little bit more thick to thin, because I'm not entirely happy with it. And like I said, I want these characters in the front to pop a little bit more so they don't get lost so much in the background. And as you can see over here with this character, I had already started to put it together. Now, I know a lot of it's not done, and I left this way on purpose. I wanted you to see the process of how things are put together. Normally I wouldn't have even colored on all of it, but for showcase abilities and to show you how I work and stuff, and every piece is different. It's kind of like you start and you go, but I wanted to see like how it all can form together as you're going along. Now, over here too, now I was talking about drawing through the characters and stuff, or drawing through your pieces as you're doing it, and I'm going to show you exactly what I mean by that. So right here we have the trash lid to Oscar's lid that's going to be on top of his head, and as you can see, it's going right through Bert's arm. So, and the reason for that, even though I'm going to go back and erase all this out later on, and we're not going to see him behind the trash can, we're not going to see, but you still need to draw through your figures and make sure you have the correct proportions, correct perspective, at least the best that you could be. So this is pretty much why you're seeing this line through. And then of course you go back and you erase it and everything, so you don't have to worry about, you have it in the right perspective and you draw everything too. I did the same thing with Bert's legs and stuff. Originally I've already erased it out, so I just wanted to make sure that everything was going to show up properly. So because you would see things behind Elmo's legs here, with Telly, all these characters and stuff, it's just part of the way you do things, and that's why it's on other layers. Now, to give you an example, too, of what I mean by this little thicker line, I have already drawn a little trash can, that's the name of it, right here. And you see how that one added little thicker line on the edge of Oscar's trash can that he's sitting in really gives it, to me, a little bit more depth, a little bit more pronounced. It makes it pop out a little bit more. And that's essentially what I'm going to try to do. And as you can see, he goes right through, again, drawing through the figure, right through Bert's leg. Even though that's not going to be there, I still needed to be able to get the correct line, because what we do see is still as important as what we don't see. So we're going to see as we go through all this. And of course, you got Ernie's hand. It's also going to have to be thick, the thinner. Let's get rid of these flats so we can see a little bit more of the line itself. And as you can see, even on Elmo here, where I took some time to thicken his little fingers and stuff out, and thicken the fur, and leaving tiny little lines. Now, last Sunday, you saw me do a lot of this, and I was building up the fur and adding more layers, and then, of course, they had to change. It's like everything else, it has to change, and you have to go through and clean it. And that's another thing I wanted to show you, too, cleaning. Now, if you see Ernie here, as we zoom in, see these little spots here and there? That's where I have made erases, or I've erased stuff out, or have a little mark here from when I was cleaning up things, or putting the line down initially. So I wanted to take the time to show you that. So when you're zooming in and you're putting your line work, before you even really want to color, you wanted to make sure, and always make sure you're on the right layer, that you want to make sure your line work is cleaned up. Now, you may not have this problem yourself, Unfortunately, I still do. So I always try to go back and clean. And yes, it's very tedious. It can be tedious, and it may not be super important, especially if you're doing more of a painting type thing. You won't have to worry about that because you're going to be blending your colors and bringing shapes, and you won't have this strong containment line around it. But if you are going to do it in the process the way I do it, then you want to make sure that you have your line work and everything is very clean. You don't want to have any spots. Now with this white background, you can see a little bit better on some things, but even so, you want to go back and you'll see when I take out this white background, you get this checker pattern that usually Photoshop goes with, and you can even tell even more sometimes what you're missing, especially when you do your flats. And if you see right here, that white was covering all this up. So all these little places and stuff, even though I went over it as best as I could. Let's go ahead and select that. Okay, we'll go to the flat layer, and then I would also go back and clean all this up as well as I was going on, because it's maybe not necessary, because when you look at it from this distance, when you look at it overall, you're not going to see that. But if I was going to print this, then I wanted to make sure that all that is clean, because it could very well possible show up in the printing process. And it also kind of looks pretty bad when you kind of leave little spots like that. So that's another thing that you got to keep in mind as well. There's a lot of things as you're working digitally, as you're doing any kind of work, or traditionally or digitally at all, that you got to keep in mind with while you're working. It's just little tips and tricks and stuff you pick up as you go along, what you see as you're reading, you're watching videos, tutorials, and like I said before, there's a lot of great tutorials out there. And one of the people I do recommend is a teacher I had who was one of my instructors at Cubert during my short little brief time there, is Fernando Ruiz. Now he has a YouTube channel, and he goes over a whole bunch of materials, perspective, character design, how to draw the heads correctly, and he is very, very good. And I still learn things as watching from his videos now. And so I would highly recommend that if you are interested in any kind of more comic book medium, or learning how to do stuff better, or your basic structures and Nami, or just how to actually do it a lot better than I do, then I would definitely recommend you check out Fernando Ruiz. So let's go ahead and color this in too, so you can see these little spots and stuff right here. And this is kind of what I do too. I go through it after I'm done, normally after I'm finished with everything, and kind of clear up these lines, because as you see, that black line showed up a little bit more because it's not actually there, so it's like right there on a little bit of an edge. And that's something that I picked up too, like when I'm cleaning, trying to put all this together, and just trying to make those, I want my ink line to show, you don't want to have those spots and everything. So this is basically what I wanted to show, and this is another reason, as I said, that I wanted you guys, for anyone who's watching, to see exactly how I do things, with all the mistakes, all the things that you don't normally see, the things that people don't showcase, to hopefully encourage you a little bit too. So you could be like, wow, look at all the mistakes and stuff he makes, look at all the crap he does. It's like, I didn't realize you actually would make that many mistakes, and you would do all that. I would think you would have it right the first time. Well, there's some artists that can. But for the most part, you still have to go back and refine everything. You still have to go back and clean up your work, because you're going to make mistakes, because you're human. And that's also something that is considered for you guys out there who are just kind of been doing this for a while, or just kind of starting out on your own artwork and your own creativity, whatever you're doing, whether that be coloring, inking, drawing with a pencil, drawing in the computer, is that you have to accept the fact that it's a process. It's, you get better in time. And as I've said many times before, and I will say many times after, art in itself is a journey, and it's like any skill set. You don't get better as you go along, and the more you do it, and the more you keep learning, the more you keep pushing yourself, the better you're going to be. So we're just going to go ahead and try to clean up some of this a little bit for you, and continue on showcasing that a little bit, so you can see a little bit of what I was trying to do. And again, you got all these characters, and you see I made this little slate right here. Okay, no big deal. Control Z, and even though that I have that little blue right there, we're just going to use the eyedropper tool. We're going to select that. We're going to go through it like that. So we want to make it pop out. We can just color over it. It's not that big of a deal. It's one of the great things I like working digitally. I can live with some of those mistakes. Not that I'm intending always trying to make mistakes, or, but that's just kind of, one of the reasons why I do like working digitally, because I can fix these things a lot easier. And plus, like I said in my last video, I can experiment a lot more, and it's kind of, this thing right here is an experimentation for me. I haven't drawn these characters in a very long time, and there is a lot still that, every time, even though these characters themselves are a little bit simple, simple shapes, simple designs, but even with the simpleness, even something can be even complex, it can be even complicated. It's just something you got to get used to, but this is a good way to kind of get started. And I was hoping by showcasing all this stuff, it would give you a general overview, as you can see the process, and I can build it up, and you can see how things are going, and you can go, wow, okay, that's not too bad. I can do that. And you're right, you can. So let's go ahead and so you guys can see old Bert here. Now, again, we're going to have these lines and stuff in the way, but that's okay, because we're going to erase those. But I wanted to show you a little bit, since I showed a little bit of how I do my line work last time. I'm going to show you how to do my coloring a little bit, at least the flats, so you guys can see, just like I've been doing here. So we're going to go ahead and color this yellow in real fast. And yeah, I'm going to be coloring over some stuff I've already done, and I can go back and fix that. You could, of course, zoom in really close, or a lot closer than I had, and you can make sure you don't hit that or whatever. But I'm not really worried about it, so I can go over it. Not everybody would choose to do it this way, but that's just the way I'm choosing to do it. So, it's art itself. There's all kinds of techniques, all ways of learning things, and you need to understand your basic foundations. You need to grow, and I, even after all these years, I'm still struggling with some of my foundations, still struggle with some of the things that I am trying to achieve, and that's part of the journey. That's part of the reason why we keep at it, and one of the reasons why we keep going. And no matter what, every piece you do, no matter what it is, no matter if it's the greatest piece you've ever done at that time, or if it's okay, you are going to learn something from it, as long as you stay at it. But you have to, make sure that you are realistic with yourself too. I like when I went back and looked at, when I was first drawing this over, and I'm looking at Bert there, and I'm like, ugh, that was bad. I can't even believe I showed that. Oh, that was horrible. It didn't even look like Bert and Ernie. But instead of allowing that to bother me, and say, well, you know what, it's a good lesson to point out that, hey, we can improve things, and you can see the progression over time, and you can see as you put in the time and you keep working that you get better as you go along. So, and again, I am by no means a master at any of this, and some things I do a little bit different than some people, because that's just the way I see things. Like I've said many times, I see things in lines and shapes and stuff. So especially even with this inking, there's people who will rotate their canvas by using the R button, and you can rotate everything around here, and you don't have to do it all one way. Well, my computer has a problem with that sometimes, so I've learned to adapt as it were, trying to just do it this way and get better and stuff. But there's still times I'll rotate the canvas and stuff if I'm able while I'm inking. And again, normally I would have had all this inking and stuff done, but I wanted you to see it as I've been working on other things, but I had to kind of stop myself from finishing it too, because none of us really want to show our bad work. So, but I wanted you to see as an encouragement that, hey, this is just part of it. No piece, no matter what it is, no matter how long you've been doing any of this, is going to be great when you first start, and you're going to make some changes, and you're going to make mistakes, and even after you change everything, work on everything, it's still not going to be great. There'll still be things that you don't like about it. There'll still be things that, oh man, I could have done this better and everything. And you just got to take that on the next piece and move on. So when you do the next piece, learn your lessons and say, okay, so I did, I accomplished what I was trying to achieve with this, and on my next piece I'm going to do this better. I'm going to learn to get this coloring better. I'm going to really push myself on my inking or on my line work and my understanding of shapes and dimensions, and whatever it is that you're trying to achieve or whatever you're trying to work on. You just got to keep pushing yourself. But the number one thing, as I didn't showcase because I couldn't showcase this, is that because I just figured out how to do this window, is to make sure you have reference. Because we see things sometimes where we're like, I know what that character looks like, or I know how that looks. I'm trying to figure out what line that's under. And I know exactly how that works. And then you draw it and you go back and you look at reference and you go, wait a minute, that's not how that looked. Our mind's eye sometimes, unless you've drawn the character or that particular object or whatever countless and countless of times, you think you may know what it looks like, but your mind can trick you sometimes. So that's why no matter what you're doing, it's always preferable to have reference and to always draw from reference. And hence why I went back and changed a lot of this and tried to improve upon what I did with Bert and Ernie here. So, but as you can see, this is kind of just the way I put down my flats. And I'm just constantly just going over stuff, filling in gaps, putting it together, and it's just kind of how the way I will work. And let's see, okay, so his little turtleneck here is white. Now I can leave this white here because I could use the white background for it, but instead I'm going to go ahead and draw that in, especially since I got this checkerboard pattern where I can tell the difference. There's no white there. I want to make sure I put that in, and the reason why I choose to do that is because I don't want there to be any of those gaps. I don't want there to be anything missing as I'm going through it. So I hope you guys, as I'm messing around with this, are doing well. I know that most of us are kind of stuck inside indoors, which has really encouraged me to try to do these a little bit more often. And as I'm always working, it seems a while before I can ever really post things for people to see and whatnot. I was like, wow, if I can get this live stream to work, this would be great. So you guys can actually see me working and see me how I do things. And I hope you learn something from it, and I hope it encourages you. And as I always say too, if you see anything that I can do better or anything that you might be able to help me with, then by all means let me know. Leave a comment in the comment section below, send me an email, whatever, how you want to do it, because as I say, art in itself is one of those journeys, and we have to get the more knowledge that we can share, the more that we can spend learning with each other. It builds us as a better community, because we're all good at something. Better at other things than not. So some things I'm pretty good at, and some artists that I know personally, some of my artistic cohorts out there are a lot better at other things, so I always graduate to them or anyone I can and try to learn how they do things so I can add that to my repertoire and take bits and pieces of stuff that I enjoy and say, okay, I like the way they do this, and I want to do it that way. Or, you know what, I kind of like the way they do this and stuff, and I might try it this way. Let me see if I can make this work for me. And it looks like we're lagging out a little bit, so that's okay, because I'm pretty certain I knew where it was, so it's not too bad today. At least not like that one time where we sit here for, I don't know, felt like forever, especially when you're like, oh no, we got all this going on. Okay, so he's got a whole bunch of stripes and stuff here, so we're going to try, I believe this is going to be the same color, so let's take a look. Alright, so we got 84, or is it R156, 206, 83, so I want to make sure that I got the same color here. 151, 280. Wow, so there is a difference. There's a slight difference. So let's just go back and use the eyedropper tool and select that one color. So there might be a reason why the artist who did this initially chose that, or maybe they just wanted it a little bit darker and stuff. And that's another thing when you're doing these color samples, when you're sampling color from pieces, you have to, as I showed in that fan video, my very first little live stream test, as it were, there's different kinds of reference out there. Plus, when you're getting reference from the internet, or from the web or wherever you're getting, it could be different quality of kind of like resolutions and different DPIs, which can, you know, mess you up and everything as you're trying to put things together. So some things degrade too, depending on how much, you know, information was there. So you might have to make some adjustments if you don't have something that shows you the exact color scheme that they use, you know, the exact RGB. You know, RGB is red, green, and blue, so you know, you want the exact numbers. And you know, if you were doing it for someone who could give you that, you know, a professional, or for the studio itself, they would have all that information. But in a sense, you still kind of, like I said, we kind of got fidget sometimes and kind of just go with what looks like it's correct or the closest thing. So get all these stripes in here so you guys can see this a little bit more. So I won't be taking up too much of your time because it looks like I've already gone 25 minutes, but that's all right. So today was more just I wanted to show you about how I was doing things and give you all these little examples and trying to still get used to all that. Now I still haven't been able to show my brushes. I don't know why this thing won't show it. But for you guys who may be curious of what I'm using right now, hopefully I'll have that sorted out next time. I'm using the hard round brush. So you don't, the hard round brush with no pressure size. So I don't, with pressure size, that's more for painting. You know, you want to make sure that, you know, it gives you like a variance of how much pressure you're putting on with your pen or whatnot, whatever kind of tablet you're using. But with a hard round brush, it's just a really solid color, so you don't have that little degradation. And I will show you that so you guys can see it. So I'm going to switch to a pressure size brush, and you can see the difference right here. So the more I put, the thicker it gets. But you see it has kind of like got that little haze. And you know, when you're doing flats and when you're doing like cell shading, you really don't want that because, you know, it will stand out very quickly. So, but like I said, if you're going more for a painting thing, then that's what you want to be using, is a pressure size, where you're going to be changing because you're going to be, it'll help you blend your colors and everything a lot better. But as you can see, you know, in the reference over here with Sesame Street, there is no variance really, unless you see a few pieces, a few covers where it looks like they have painted some stuff. And I would love to show you all that, but I can't get these windows to always show up. So, all right, so we're going to go back to the screen again. Whoop, too dark. I think I selected something that had, and we're just going to do this. I already got the color there, so no reason to do that. All right. This is kind of how you put it all together, or at least how I put it together. Let's see. You can hear all the scrapes over my Wacom tablet here. Let's finish up. We're gonna lag out a little bit. It's okay. That's all right. And you see this little white gap right here. You can barely see it, but I still want to get rid of that so we don't see that. A little bit of that green going there. Now I can, of course, go back and do that a little bit later, but I just wanted to show you a little bit on how I'm doing, you know, how you can clean it up and all that jazz, which we want to make sure we don't have any of those gaps at all. Even over here on Ernie's pants, where you can see, you know, I still got to go back and add a little bit more. Okay, so there's Bert's shirt, basically, and I still got a few more of the other side, but you can even see on all that how it's all popping. So I could leave the line work on some of these characters and I could vary it out. I definitely want to go over Ernie's hand here again. I want to thicken that out a little bit more just so it pops. You know, thicken out the underneath Big Bird's arm, maybe this one little finger where he's kind of covering up Cookie's eye there. So and even Cookie's gonna need a little bit of thicker line out. I'll just get in front of these characters and like that. But look forward to seeing this soon. I intend on finishing this up this week, and like I said, I'm probably gonna leave it with flats and stuff for now. I may go back and change my mind. because I always like change my mind, it seems. And I may add some tones and highlights and whatnot. But at the very least, I should have hopefully all this done this week, and I'll be posting it on my website here on my art page. And the next art stream I'll be doing, I'll try to do something that's not so Sesame Street. I'm considering doing some other comics characters or whatnot. I have a few other projects I've been wanting to showcase and wanting to go through, so we'll just have to play it by ear. I hope you guys are doing well, and as always, my friends, be good to each other and never stop dreaming.